Mars should never have become this empty. Across its surface lie the dry channels of ancient rivers. Broad basins still trace the outlines of vanished lakes. Everything visible suggests a world that once held flowing water for immense stretches of time. Yet today, Mars is a frozen desert where liquid water cannot survive. The familiar explanation feels obvious. It is simply farther from the sun than Earth. But the landscape refuses to agree. Those abandoned valleys are the first contradiction. Distance from the sun can explain a colder planet. It cannot explain a planet that clearly spent part of its history shaped by abundant flowing water. The Mars we see today is not the Mars that existed billions of years ago. Somewhere between those two worlds, something fundamental disappeared. The question is no longer why Mars is cold. It is what changed. The first clue is invisible. Orbiting spacecraft mapped the ancient southern highlands and discovered something locked inside the rocks themselves. Vast regions carry powerful patterns of magnetism frozen into ancient volcanic crust. Like a recording preserved in stone, those rocks remember a force that no longer exists. A magnetic field, not scattered pockets of protection, but evidence that Mars once possessed a global shield surrounding the entire planet. That discovery changes the meaning of the desert below. Mars did not begin as an exposed world. It once carried an invisible defense system standing between its atmosphere and the constant stream of charged particles flowing outward from the sun. Yet the planet does not remember that shield equally. The northern plains remain almost magnetically silent. The southern highlands preserve bold alternating bands where the ancient field became trapped as molten rock cooled. The contrast is striking. One half of the planet preserved the memory of a shield. The other preserves only its absence. The shield existed. The real mystery is not whether it was there. It is why it vanished. Its disappearance mattered more than anyone standing on the surface could ever have seen. A magnetic field cannot be photographed. It casts no shadow across the ground, yet its absence quietly rewrote everything above the rocks. Today, spacecraft watching Mars measure atoms escaping into space in real time. The process is almost impossible to imagine because nothing dramatic appears to happen. There are no violent clouds being torn away, no visible storm stripping the sky. Instead, particles arriving from the sun collide with the upper atmosphere. Individual atoms gain enough energy to escape the planet forever. Oxygen drifts away. Carbon dioxide escapes. Hydrogen continues outward into space. Each loss is almost insignificant on its own. But they never stop. Over immense stretches of time, the atmosphere slowly leaks away. The missing shield had never been decoration. It had been protection. Without it, Mars could no longer hold on to the blanket of gas surrounding the planet. The atmosphere was never self-sustaining. It depended on an invisible system that had already failed. Now another familiar assumption begins to collapse. Looking at Mars today, dryness seems like the obvious beginning of the story. Empty riverbeds appear to explain everything. The evidence points in the opposite direction. As the atmosphere thinned, pressure at the surface continued to fall. Eventually, it became too low for stable liquid water to remain exposed across the planet. Rivers could no longer keep flowing. Lakes could no longer survive. Water either froze into the ground or entered the atmosphere before gradually escaping into space. The dry landscape is not the original disaster. It is one of the final consequences. Those winding valleys no longer preserve the memory of rivers alone. They also preserve the memory of an atmosphere thick enough to support them. When the air collapsed, the water became another victim. Mars did not lose water first. It lost the conditions that allowed water to exist. Every visible scar now points toward an earlier, invisible failure. That trail finally leads beneath the surface. Modern seismic measurements reveal that Mars still possesses a liquid metallic core. But liquid metal alone cannot generate a planetary magnetic field. It must remain in constant, vigorous motion, driven by heat rising through the planet's interior. Long ago, that engine began to slow. Mars is much smaller than Earth. Its size allowed internal heat to escape more efficiently over billions of years. As the planet gradually cooled, the circulation inside its core weakened until it could no longer sustain the magnetic dynamo. The invisible shield faded. Nothing changed overnight at the surface. The rivers did not vanish in a single moment. The atmosphere did not disappear instantly. Instead, one hidden system stopped working. Everything else followed. The dead river valleys, the collapsing atmosphere, the frozen plains, the endless desert. Each became another stage in the same cascade. Seen from orbit today, Mars looks like a planet that simply failed to remain warm. The evidence tells a different story. Its surface is the final chapter of an internal collapse that began thousands of kilometers below the ground, inside a cooling, metallic heart that could no longer power the shield protecting the world above it. Mars itself has become the record of that chain of events. The dry valleys are no longer just geological features. The magnetic scars locked into ancient rocks are no longer curious measurements. The faint stream of escaping atoms trailing behind the planet is no longer an isolated process. Together, they reconstruct the slow death of a habitable world. Nothing about the sun had to change. The decisive change happened inside Mars. The frozen desert is only the final visible consequence of an invisible engine that quietly went silent billions of years ago, leaving an entire planet unable to defend the world it once was.